and call a special meeting on 6/20 and adopt the budget. But this lays out the entire package of how we would lay the budget out for you. There would be budget workshops that we've laid out over a 2-week period. We've shown that on the 16th, where we would talk about general fund. We'd take revenues first. We'd go through those on the general fund side, then we go through the expenditures. There's essentially 2 days worth of that. Then on the 19th, we'd look at enterprise funds, go through the exact same thing, revenues and expenditures, and talk about those. That's on the continuation budget. The next week, we'd come back on service expansions, and we talk about county service expansions. So if one of the departments came in and said, we'd like to add this service, or we'd like to add this position, or if a commissioner said, here's something new that I'd like to see, we'd put those numbers together, we'd put it in a service expansion form. And essentially the way I've done those throughout my career is, I'm not the one selling that to you. I don't even make a recommendation on it. It's the department head or the outside agency that comes in and presents that to you. And they say, here's what I'm asking for. Here's why we need this. Here's how it benefits the county. Here's how it benefits the citizens. Here's how much it costs. Here's some offsetting revenues. And lays all that out in a presentation session. The board gets the opportunity to ask questions and understand it, and then you move on to the next one. And at the end of the night, you've got a list. And you say, I like this one, I don't like this one, I like this one, or I don't like this one. And it depends. And what we do is we say, here are your revenues and here are your expenditures. Based on the continuation budget, you either have this much money left over or you don't have any money. So you really don't have much to talk about. If you got some money left over, you have the option of saying, we want to reduce it by this much and bank that money, or we want to decrease the tax rate by this much to take up that. Or we want to say, here's what 1 penny on the tax rate brings you. Here's this much money. We want to fund all these different things. So it puts that back in the board's policy-making decision on what they want to do. So that's how we kind of lay that out. And then on the 26th, we would finalize the budget, and you'd have a budget ready to go for public hearing. So that's the way that schedule is kind of laid out. And I know this is the first time you've seen it, but we want to put it out there for you to consider. It lays it out and puts it in a very step-by-step fashion, and you know when you're going to receive what, and you know what our timeline is on doing those things. And we're held to those, and we'll meet.
I'm going to turn it over to Anita and let her give you a little bit more detail on where we are fund balance wise right now.
So now that we have a great understanding of the broad definition of what fund balance is, we want to drill down a little bit into the county's fund balance. When I came to the county 3 weeks ago, I was very pleased to learn that you have a strong fund balance policy currently in place. This board adopted back in March 2013 a fund balance policy that says the county will strive to maintain an available fund balance in the amount of 35% of budgeted general fund operating expenditures each fiscal year. Now that 35% number that you committed to maintain in fund balance is substantially higher than the LGC's required amount of 8%. And it's interesting that the LGC, they don't really give a lot of guidance to local governments about what a healthy fund balance amount is, but what they do say to local governments is, you better not go below 8%, because if you do, we're going to come in and we're going to take over the finances of your county. That's basically the direction that they do provide us with.
And they have actually done that.
They have done that.
Yeah, they have done that, and coming from Alamance County, while the LGC never took over, the county fund balance got down to 11% at Alamance County a couple of years ago. And the LGC had a lot of time there.
Okay, so why is it important to have a fund balance reserve? Well, fund balance provides you with sufficient cash flow to pay your obligations. So if you think about the county, if you think about our biggest revenue, it's our taxes. It's our ad valorem taxes. And if you think about the timing of when we collect those taxes, we receive most of that money starting about December, maybe a little bit in November. So from July, when you start operating from your adopted budget, through December, so for about 4 or 5 months, you're actually operating in a negative cash flow type of a situation, and you're actually drawing down your fund balance a little bit until that tax money starts flowing in. Second reason to have a very healthy fund balance is to maintain a high bond rating. And as Mark mentioned earlier, back in December, Standard & Poor's did increase the county's bond rating from an A+ to a AA-, which is a great thing. And I agree with you, Mark. I think that's directly related to the healthy fund balance that the county has. Another reason for a good fund balance is to offset any significant economic downturns and revenue shortfalls that you might not be anticipating. And then also, it provides funds for emergency needs. And the first thing that comes to mind with us being a coastal county, of course, is a hurricane. We have that category 3 or 4, or heaven forbid 5 hurricane come through our county. Yes, we're going to receive FEMA funds, but it takes, 18 to 24 months for those funds to start rolling in. So that's the time when we would need to rely on the reserve fund balance to get through.
And also, just as you think about our revenue stream, which is our largest taxpayer, potash, 17% of tax revenues in this county. 17%.
Is that a real estate or total?
That's, if you look at the.
They're writing a check for about
That's
6 million a year.
Now, thank goodness, they're in a stable position and they've got long-term permits and those kind of things. But if, for some terrible reason, that were to go away, you got this huge one tax rate. The next one down is 1.2%, I think. So you go from 17 to 1.2. If you were to drop that entity out, then you've got to figure out a way to continue to manage that. And it doesn't save you. It just gives you time to decide what are we going to slash and burn.
A good example is that thing down at Moorhead, that was affecting Texas Gulf at $1 million a day. If that had continued, potash would have probably started looking for another location.
Well, they're looking for another place to ship from. They can't relocate.
The resources are there. Thank goodness, that's the great thing, they're there. But I mean, it's like we talked about, you look for those, that's one of the things that, if you were in private business and you had one contract, you had 3 contracts that you did, you were private industry, and you had 3 contracts. And one of those contracts was 75% of your business. And that contract went out of business, then you would die immediately, you'd lose your business. So that's some of the things you look at, you have to look at those pieces.
Or the flip side is that if you don't protect the fund balance and it goes the other way and they're still here, you go to them first, ask them to pay their money up front.
We have done that.
Yeah, we've done that. They have written us a check. That has happened.
Wasn't a good time to find.
Don't want to go back there, do you?
No.
Or you have to have a line of credit at the bank to do it. Well, we didn't go back, we just went to potash and they said the line of the check earlier.
In governmental accounting, there are 5 classes of fund balance. You have non-spendable fund balance, which is like your inventory. It's not in a liquid state where you could actually spend that money. You have restricted fund balance from outside sources, and that would be your grantor's and your bond covenants. You have committed fund balance, which is done by the county board, where they earmark funds for a specific purpose. And a perfect example of that you currently have would be your tax revaluation funds. So the county has those funds on deposit at the bank, but you really can't spend them because you committed those funds for that specific project. Assigned funds, that's your working capital, and then this is the number that you're really interested in. What's my unassigned fund balance? What amount do I have that, or does the county have that we can spend, that we can actually spend? Well, the LGC provides us with a statutory calculation of available fund balance. And it's calculated as follows. You take your total general fund balance, you subtract out those non-spendable items, you subtract out the restricted items, and that gives you your fund balance available for spending. And this is used as a basis for comparing our governmental unit to others.
And that's essentially the GASB definition as well. GASB, and the LGC's pulled that from the GASB in the past.
So what is Beaufort County's general fund balance available for spending at June 30th, 2015? Well, here's the calculation. You take your total fund balance of $26.7 million. You subtract out those committed funds for the revaluation. You subtract out those other funds that are reserved by grantors and by the state for other spending. That's not available for you. And you actually have available the $19.3 million. And it's important to look at that amount as a percentage of your total general fund expenditures. And so your current available fund balance is 34.1%. Just about right at what your policy says you want to be at.
Stabilization, talk a little bit about stabilization funds, what are they?
I don't think we have the latest slide because I actually changed that. These are your reserved funds. It could be grant revenue that you have. That's the biggest thing that you haven't spent yet. Yes, sir. Okay. Just wanted to give you a 5-year view of what your fund balance has looked like over the years. You can see you had some pretty significant growth here of about 6%, another 5 to 6%, then it went up 6%, and then we dropped down just a little bit.
And it's important to note there too that percentage change will change. That percentage will change based on the expenditures as well. So this year the total dollar fund balance actually went up,
That's true.
but the percentage went down because general fund expenditures went up as
That's
well. So that's a good figure, but I like the way the policy was written in 13 because it essentially sets that 35 as a goal, not something you're tying yourself to irrevocable, because it is going to change. That percentage is going to change even if the dollar goes up.
So where do other neighboring counties stand? Craven County, they're at 26.5%. Martin County, 28%. Pamlico County, about 45%. Washington County's at 48%. And I threw the city of Washington in there because we spit on them over there. They're at 42%. So if you look at the Beaufort County, you're right in there. You're right in the middle. 34%.
Well, those of you that don't want to hear this, just stick your fingers in your ears. One of the things that's going on with these numbers right here, all of these are political entities that are empowered by the state to set tax rates, and then to use the police power of the state to go collect that money. All of those fund balances are way too high. It's fine for us to sit here. We don't need to borrow any money, so we really don't care what bond rating is, because we're not planning on borrowing any money anytime soon that I know of. So we don't care what
I would remind the board that your policy does state that if your fund balance does get to a level that goes too high or above the 35%, that you would either pay down your debt with those excess funds or put it in a reserve for capital items, which, you know, we've heard several departments speak to the needs, you know, of the maintenance of their buildings and facilities. I don't know, Ryan, if you want to speak about the idea of a vehicle replacement fund and maintenance facility.
Yeah, one of the things, and of course, and Commissioner Richardson, you're absolutely right, that's a political decision made by.
That's right.
It's a political decision made by everybody to say, here's what we think our fund balance ought to be, our percentage. And we as staff work for you as elected board to try to stay with that policy. So we're working under the policy that has been set. When you think about some of those things, it's like, and I will relate back to what we did over at the city when we were there. We have fairly healthy fund balance as well. But there are a lot of things that you're paying money for or that you need to do that you haven't done. So essentially, some of that money you should already spend or you should have it set aside to be able to spend. An example of that is a vehicle replacement fund. We put one in play over at the city where we look at all of our vehicles. Your rolling stock is a tremendous expense for you. It's something that's constantly turning over that you have to replace. Now, the good news is you're not having to buy $800,000 fire truck or $1 million ladder truck. You got to buy $150,000 ambulance. That's the biggest cost you have right now. The majority of our rolling stock is trucks and sheriff's office vehicles, and those are we budgeted about $35,000 apiece for those to completely outfit and do everything. So one of the things that we looked at, because what you will see as you get into a replacement schedule, you'll see spikes up and down. So you replace 15 here, you replace whatever here, and your numbers, as you start putting money into that, it spikes up and down as you buy it. And what we try to do in the budget is try to make things level. We want to see good trends, we want to be able to watch those trends, we want to look at historical things and be able to project in the future what we need. So one of the things that we did over at the city was we said, take all of our vehicles, we put them in a program where we said, you know, when do we need to replace this vehicle based on either a policy or a mileage or something. Whatever that policy was said, this is what we did. We laid them all in there, and we said, what does it take for the general fund to transfer into this vehicle replacement fund every year about $200,000? Every year it's taking $200,000 and sticking it in that fund. What have you got to front load that fund with so that the fund balance inside that fund, or that, I don't say fund balance, but the amount of money in that fund goes up and down, but it never crosses zero. And you've always got enough in there that you can replace on schedule what you need to replace, okay? And then you don't have these wild swings where in 1 year in the general fund, you're transferring $1 million to replace vehicles. And then the next year, you're only transferring $100,000. Every year, you're transferring $200,000. And it's just like clockwork. And it goes up and down inside that, but you don't ever have to, again, you get that level stream going there. So it helps you plan and helps you budget. And then you can always look further out and say, okay, if we don't need this one replaced, we push it back a little bit. And that's the beauty of it, is you evaluate them every year to see if that's where you need to be. And what we did, we actually took about $2 million, $1.5 million, we took $1.2 million out of fund balance to seed that. So that way we had enough in there that the balance went down. When they bought an $800,000 fire truck, it never crossed zero, and then it built itself back up. So we're trying to do that. But you always had enough, and you're self-sustaining because you were only transferring in every year 200 instead of $1 million, 150, 200. So you took those spikes out. And those are some of the things we're going to bring to you at budget time to show you. We're going to take every vehicle we have across our entire rolling stock, and we're going to put it into a plan like that for you and show it to you. Because some of those things you got to keep up with, and you need to be able to look long term at what it's going to cost and how it's going to do. Roof replacement projects, infrastructure costs, those same kind of things, they need to be done, and there needs to be a plan for them. And what you really ought to do is start setting money aside for that in capital funds. And then it's there, that's what it's for. So that's that's the good news, is you got some money to do that if you so choose to do that. And again, it's a policy decision by the board to decide.
You know, I don't argue with that being good management, if you will. It somewhat presupposes that government is going to continue to grow and we're not going to make policies and changes in the way we manage things, and we're always going to need all this stuff, whatever. But it's still good management. I don't argue necessarily with that, but what do you do when you funded all this stuff and you still have surpluses?
Then I think according to your policy, you pay down your debt first.
Which you never give it back to the taxpayers.
You start paying down, well.
Now, see, the right answer is you give some of this back to the taxpayers, and the problem I have from a policy standpoint is nobody wants to talk about giving anything back to the taxpayers. You're just keep finding places to spend it.
Let me clarify that, and I answer a political question for you from a management point of view. From a management point of view, based on the policy that you have, if there's extra money, you pay down your debt. That's what the policy is. Now, from the policy standpoint, the political answer to that is what you, is the conversation that's for that. But as it stands right now, that's what we're supposed to be doing with it.
Yeah,
above 35.
There's two sides to this point. I agree, and the problem in all of this is governments everywhere are spending more money and buying more things. So where does it stop? Because local government, we're not an entity that, we're here to do the bare minimum that's necessary. This is a political statement that is necessary for the public interest. So where that line is becomes a political question, where the state is doing this and the feds are doing this. And I'll give you a good example of why what you're talking about works sometimes and doesn't work. The state government on 2 or 3 occasions have created these rainy day funds. And they 500 million is what they like. 500 million in rainy day fund. They've done it twice that I know of. Both times, from a political standpoint, the money was put up there by Republicans. Guess who spent the money? The Democratic administrations, where they came right behind them, drained those funds. And then the Republicans, what we've gone through now for the last 2 or 3 years, the Republicans are so proud of, we've got you straightened out again financially, we've cut this, we've cut that, we've done that. And oh, by the way, we've created another rainy day fund. Isn't that wonderful? Guess who's going to spend that rainy day fund? It will not be Republicans. So it's a political question for how this money is spent once it's piled up. And my argument is the taxpayer and the public deserves that money more than government.